So the question on everyone's mind is, how do you make money online and how do you make money doing what you love? I'm Sandra Bellamy, otherwise known as the Asexual Entrepreneur and Author, and I interview other authors, entrepreneurs and creators how they make money, make cash, doing what they love, so you can do the same. Make Money, Make Cash is all about putting the law of action back in attraction, because without action, nothing happens. So hit that subscribe button and the bell icon now so you can discover how you can make money, make cash, doing what you love, doing what you're passionate about, and doing what will make your dreams come true. And stay tuned for our next interview. 5 things you will learn in this video: how to make money as a therapist, how to get clients, mistakes to avoid if you're an author or business owner, what actions you need to take to better your life and business, and how to turn a passion into a profession, and so much more. Hello, it's Sandra from Make Money, Make Cash, putting the law of action back in attraction. And today we've got a very special guest, which is Dr. Alan Simberg. Hello, Dr. Alan, how are you?
Hello, Sandra. Thank you for asking, and I appreciate having the opportunity to speak with you today.
It's great, isn't it? So can you tell the audience, the people that are listening, a bit about yourself, what you do, and most importantly, why you do it?
Sure. Well, I have a Ph.D. in counseling psychology. I'm licensed as a marriage and family therapist and a chemical dependency counselor, and I have certification in applied clinical nutrition. I work with couples and individuals, and I help them to overcome their challenges. Obviously, I also help people overcome challenges who may be working through their addictions. And basically, the reason I do what I do is because I enjoy helping people, and I enjoy helping people to get past their challenges.
Wow, that's amazing. And so where did the inspiration come for you to do what you do? So you say you like to help people overcome their challenges, but was there a challenge in your life you went through that made you feel that way?
Well, actually, my decision point came at a very, very early age. It wasn't so much specifically exactly what the types of challenges I wanted to help people with, but I decided at a very, very early age, between ages of 7 and 8, that I wanted to help people. And the way this happened was I was sitting on a piano bench in my family's home, and I heard my parents talking. And my father let my mother know that one of our relatives was coming over that evening and that he was going to help her solve a problem. And when I heard him say that, I thought to myself, someday I want to do that. And then a few years later, I started watching a television show where there was a therapist who was helping people to overcome their challenges. And when I heard him asking the questions to the so-called client that was on the TV show, I thought to myself, wow, I wonder how that person knows the questions to ask. I hope I can do that someday. So that's basically how I decided, or when I decided, that I wanted to help people by talking to them.
So you were 7 or 8 years old. That's
Yes.
very conscious. You're a very consciously aware person then from a young age.
Yes.
Have you got a spiritual mindset by any chance?
Yes. Yes, actually I do. During the early 1990s, I started to become aware of spirituality. And the first spiritual teacher that I ever listened to was Carolyn Mace. And she spells her last name Myss. And when I listened to that, listened to her tapes, those days it was tapes.
That type.
Uh,
Yeah.
I thought, wow, how interesting. I'd like to learn more about what she's talking about and about spirituality. And then let me see if I can remember my dates. I guess it was about, I don't know, I'll guess it was about, let's see, 14. It was around 2014, 2015. I became aware of a spiritual teacher, and I contacted him, and I asked him if I could study with him. And he said yes. So I studied under his tutelage for about 5 years, might have been a little bit more. And then since then, and obviously during all that time, I also listened to other or read about other spiritual teachers. So for example, Eckhart Tolle, Wayne Dyer, Deepak Chopra, and I developed what I consider to be a pretty reasonable understanding of spirituality, which really guides the conversations I have with the clients that I talk to. And my understanding of spirituality, I have a whole understanding of spirituality, and I don't claim it's all mine. It's kind of what I would say pieces I put together from things that I've learned. Um, but what I believe the foundation of spirituality is love. And I don't mean mushy love. I mean love that comes from the heart in terms of being of service. And I also believe that we're spirits having a human experience, and that before we incarnate into human form, we identify emotional lessons that we want to learn. And then when we incarnate into human form, we're given the opportunity through experiences to learn those lessons. And of course, we don't remember what we agreed to learn, because otherwise there'd be no sense in being in human form.
I got goosebumps now with you saying that. I'm like, oh, it's like I feel it. Oh wow. Ah, I got all these goosebumps all over the because I personally believe in reincarnation. And so when I talk to someone who talks about like that process, that's kind of like imaginary to some people, whereas obviously in spirituality, we kind of really believe that and can feel it. But it's kind of an abstract concept to some people. But when I hear you talk and I relate to it, I got goosebumps because I'm like, oh yeah, I understand this. So you
I get goosebumps talking about it.
Oh, that's really good. So how does that guide you in the work that you do?
Well, one of the ways it guides me is I teach people how to communicate in the most effective way possible. So, for example, I suggest that they use guidelines in the way they communicate with others. So, one of the guidelines that I suggest is that people assess rather than judge anything that happens. So, what I explain is that when people judge, they're making things right or wrong, good or bad. When they assess, they identify either what did happen or what didn't happen, what they would have preferred, what contributed to whatever happened or did not happen, and to identify solutions for making any change that they would want to make.
Mm.
So one of the ways that translates when I'm talking with a client is I help that particular person not to judge themselves or anything that happens. And I explain that by not judging, it will help them to identify and implement the solution much quicker, and also give them a much better chance of identifying the solution.
Is that because it detaches them?
Yes, it helps them to look at things and view things in a more objective way.
And therefore, when they look at it more objectively, they're more able to be more rational and less emotional, maybe?
Yes, because that helps them not to personalize what happened.
And this is particularly effective in trauma, is it? When people
Oh
have
yeah,
experienced trauma?
oh yeah, definitely. You know, because one of the things that I always suggest to people is instead of asking themselves the question, why did this happen to me?
Hmm.
I recommend that they think, what can I learn from this?
What about asking as well, like, what is this doing for me rather than to me?
Yes. Yep. That, in a certain sense, that's exactly what that question implies.
Yeah. I was going to say, it's like when you say the lessons learned, it's like when you get into a situation that's not good or it seems negative, you can always think like, what is this doing for me rather than to me? Like you said, what lessons am I learning? What am I going to get from this experience? Because I personally believe that everything happens for a reason. Is that what
Yes.
you believe or no?
Well, almost 95, 98%. Part of what I have a hard time accepting is the idea that everything happens for a reason. Because what that implies to me is it was supposed to happen. And my belief is being in human form, we're going to have all kinds of experiences. Some of the experiences can help us to learn the lessons that we need to learn and that we agreed to learn. And I'm not in any way suggesting that we agreed to be abused. That's not what I'm suggesting, because that also implies fault and blame. And that is absolutely not accurate at all. All I'm saying is when we have certain experiences, some of those experiences can help us to learn the lessons that we agreed to learn.
Very interesting. So you said that you studied under someone. Is that correct? When we were having a conversation a minute ago, you said that you were helped by someone in your work to do with the spiritual journey you went on. There was someone that helped you that you kind of studied underneath. Could we dive some more into that, how that helped you with where you are now in your work?
Yes. As you know, being in human form means that we're not perfect. So, what I learned from that spiritual teacher is certain ways to be and also certain ways not to be.
That's very
So, so for example, and I won't identify that person because I don't want to come across as if I'm criticizing, because I'm not. There were times that he would yell at us and berate us. So what I learned from that, in a sense, not that I needed to learn it, it wasn't a big thing I had to learn. Like it wasn't like it was easy to learn. I'll put it that way. It's not to treat people that way.
yeah.
Because when you treat people that, in my opinion, when you treat people that way, it it interferes with them knowing what they really need to know, because they become emotional, become defensive. I, I I guess in a sense, what I did learn from him overall is about energy and about vibration and how we're all energy. Basically, everything is energy, and that helped me to understand the law of attraction, and particularly the underlying principle of the law of attraction being that everything is vibration, and that the way we think and the way we speak, even though it may not necessarily realistically fit the situation at the moment, it puts us into a vibration that attracts what we want. And here's one other thing that's really important that I learned from him is whenever we ask or pray for anything, it's very important to say, please let me have, or please give me, and then you request what it is, as long as it will be good for my whole life and do no harm. Because one of the things that can happen, and if you'd like, I can give you a short story to illustrate this, is if you don't add in good for my whole life and do no harm, you may get what you want in a way that also causes harm. Would you like me to give you that short story?
Yeah, go on. I think we all
Oh,
want to hear it.
okay. There was a family, and the man in the family was very concerned about money. And one day his wife came to him and said, listen, I'd like us all as a family to go on a trip. What do you think? Would you like to go? And he said, no, no, no. I have too much work I need to do. And he always prayed for more money. He always wanted more money. He said, but why don't you just take the children? It's okay. So she agreed. They went on the trip, and where they were going, they took an airplane ride to the destination. Before she got on the plane, she took out insurance. So I'm guessing many people may already have an idea where this is going.
Yeah.
Yeah. So anyway, but I'll fill in the blank anyway. No. So anyway, the plane crashed, but she took out insurance that the money made him rich.
And she died and the kids died.
Yeah.
Oh God.
So that's why he recommends, and he told that story. That's why he recommends adding that in, because what you put out comes back. So what I'm really talking about there is cause and effect. Some people call that karma. In my opinion, karma has a little bit of what I would call a counterproductive or a negative connotation. When we think of cause and effect, there's a logic to it, that what we put out comes back. So I'll give a simple example. If I don't think I can do something, and if I'm not just entertaining it as an idea, I truly believe I can't do something, unconsciously, I'm going to be contributing to either making it very difficult to accomplish or impossible to accomplish.
Yeah, I understand.
So that's an example of cause and effect. I also believe that if we intentionally mistreat people, that sets up a vibration within ourselves to attract mistreatment in one way or another.
See, I have a belief myself about we don't just attract what we are, we attract what others need.
Oh, yeah.
So that is a big thing for me, because I believe light attracts dark, dark attracts light, and if people see something in you that they don't have, you're like a magnet for them wanting to come towards you and get the thing they want or need. I don't know what your view is on that, because it's quite different to how other people view things.
Well, I have a very short answer to that. I completely agree.
Oh, wow, that's great. Yeah, because I hear so many law of attraction people talking, and it's a lot of business owners, like entrepreneurs and things like that. I specifically follow one online, and he's always talking about, oh, you attract what you are. And as I study these entrepreneurs and people that practice spirituality but use it as part of their main business, they are attracting the people who have lots of problems and issues in their life that they want solving. So they have to attract what those people that need the thing they've got. So they don't just attract what they are, because obviously they're making money off other people having a lack, of other people having a need, of other people having a problem to solve. if they attracted what they are and what they were, and they were rich and they had all the money they needed, they wouldn't attract these type of people who needed money, because they do money and business stuff as well. This particular person I'm thinking about, they wouldn't attract these people if these people already like them, because they wouldn't need them. So therefore we attract what other people need, because they need to fit, they need to fulfill a need. So that's something I'm very big on. But it's very different to a lot of what I hear in general spirituality.
Is it okay if I give you an example of how that plays out in business?
Please do, yes.
Right. When I was clinical supervisor in an outpatient drug and alcohol program, the person who was running the program had someone come in to teach group cohesiveness, to improve the morale of the staff. And one of the things that person told us is never leave a job when you're angry. So the example would be, which fits in exactly to what you just said, is that if you're not happy with the money that you're making at a particular job, and maybe you're unhappy about a few other things too, and you leave that job being unhappy, there's a difference between being unhappy and wanting to improve. Okay, so being unhappy, you'll most likely end up in a job with similar circumstances, because until we learn how to manage that unhappiness and how to not allow it to affect us in an adverse way, most likely we're going to end up in similar jobs until we're able to learn that lesson.
What do you feel then by the people who, a lot of entrepreneurs, solopreneurs, etc., they feel well, when I come across them, a lot of them say they're unmanageable. Like they can't work for an employer because they're unmanageable, because they are very much leaders in their own right. They're kind of very strong, powerful people usually. They don't really like to be told what to do, a lot of them. And, they like to be their own boss. And so a lot of them will leave jobs they don't like to do their own thing, because it feels better to them. It makes them happier. So their happiness is got from fulfilling their needs and dreams by themselves, rather than from an employer, which is less dependent. It's because obviously when you're working for an employer, there's a codependency in the sense that you're actually having to rely on them giving you a wage in that way, if you think about codependency. So should a person who's in a job, for example, leave a job to pursue their own dreams and business? Or do you think they should stick it out if they've got, like, for example, a lack of money? Do you think they should stick it out in somewhere they're miserable? Or do you think they should go off and start their own business? How do you feel and think about that?
Well, I'll answer your question by telling you what I would say to that person. I would say a good leader is a good employee. So until you are truly a good employee, it doesn't make sense for you to leave your job and to start your own business, because you will not be ready to be as successful as you could be.
Wow, that's very interesting. Because if we look at a lot of the world leaders, they kind of drop out of school, they drop out of college or don't go to it, and they're still very successful in their own right. So what would you say to those people that are successful and they don't go by the norms? They don't go to university, for example. They decide that, nah, and maybe they've had bad grades at school and they can't hold a job down, regular job, because they like doing their own thing.
Well, what I would say to those people is that, number one, education has its place, in terms of maybe being easier to get hired, maybe having an effect on the salary you make. However, I'm going to say something that's very obvious, but some people don't necessarily think about this. Rules are made by people. And just because there's a rule doesn't mean that it fits everybody or that it fits everybody in exactly the same way. Because as you just stated, people that don't finish college, and my grandmother was a perfect example of that. She didn't go to school at all. Now, this is obviously many, many years ago, many years ago. However, she didn't go to school at all, and she was highly successful in real estate. She had the common sense, and I'm sure she must have studied in some way. She learned, maybe she had a mentor or whatever. So, because when I was growing up, college was the big thing. If you didn't go to college, there was something wrong with you, or you weren't going to amount to anything. But as you said, there are many people, they don't go to college, or maybe they go to community college instead of a four-year college. But I'll tell you what I believe that also fits right into what you're saying. I think each of us are destined to be who we are. Free will can interfere with that. But I think the people that don't follow the so-called rules and are highly successful, they're doing what they were meant to be. I'll give you a perfect example. And many people do know what they were meant to do. They don't think of it that way when they're very young. When my sister was very young, she had several dolls, and she would put them on the bed and she would talk to them. And when I saw her doing that one day, I asked her, I said, what are you doing? Talking to your dolls. She said, I'm teaching them. She became a teacher. In a subconscious way, she knew at that age that she wanted to be a teacher. And she always followed that route. When she went to college, she went to a college that taught teachers. Gave people the opportunity to learn get the certification to become a teacher. So I think we all do have certain strengths that would lead us in a certain direction.
Wow.
And one of the other things that I learned, I guess it was in the 90s. Before this time, I did have a stereotype of people that went to college were better than people who did things with their hands.
Oh, wow.
I had the opportunity. Actually, there were two things that helped me to change my mind. It's kind of funny. When I was raising my son, or helping to raise my son, we used to watch Sesame Street together.
Love
And
Sesame.
I love that program.
Yeah, me too.
And one of the episodes, there was a king. And the king eliminated several jobs in the kingdom. And then one day, one of the people who was in the king's court went to him and said, Your Majesty, we have a big problem. There's garbage piling up all over the kingdom. And then the king said, Tell the garbage collectors to get the garbage immediately. And the person said, But Your Majesty, you fired all those garbage collectors. So the lesson that I got from that, and I don't remember if they said this in that particular episode, everybody has a purpose. And then in the 1990s, I had the opportunity to be a guidance counselor in an adult vocational school. And what I learned about vocations, about plumbers and electricians and whatever the job would be, everybody contributes. There's not, what one person contributes is not any more valuable than what anybody else contributes. The value that's contributed depends on the person receiving it and what value it means to them. But no one is better than no job, and no one is better than anybody else.
It's totally true. So Going back to when you were 7 or 8 and you got this idea to help people, what happened between 7 and 8 years old to what you're doing now? Like, did you go to college? Did you go to university? You've got obviously a lot of qualifications. So how did that come about?
Okay. As they say, you asked for it. Because I have a rather, in my opinion, reasonably unique. It's not that no one else has ever had this experience, but this is not the typical way for me to be where I am today.
I love that.
Oh, yeah, you are going to love this. When I was in grammar school, my mother started talking to me about going to high school.
Uh-huh.
And I thought to myself, I'm not going to high school. I have no idea even what I was talking about. I was just being a kid. Okay. When I went to high school and in grammar school, I didn't have good grades. I was a C+ student. And when I was in high school, my high school guidance counselor told me I was an underachiever, which I had no idea what that meant, but it didn't sound good.
No, it's not nice.
And I also considered myself to be stupid. So I had a C+ average in high school, which meant I only could apply to colleges that were not highly competitive. So as I continued to believe that I was stupid, I flunked out of college. It was during the Vietnam War.
Wow, you look younger than that.
And luckily, my father knew someone who was able to get me into a night school college, well, night school program of a college. I was told that I had to take the classes that I failed or got a D in, D like David, in order to prove that I was able to do college work. Although I didn't have enough credits to qualify, my grade point average was honor roll, which was the first time I ever had those kind of grades. That was a major turning point in my life because that helped me to see that I could be somebody, I could do something, and I could fulfill my dream of helping people by talking to them. And then it was just a series of events. My first job was in a community agency program for unemployed and underemployed people.
Unemployed,
and
underemployed.
underemployed. So in
What's
other words, the jobs weren't quite up to what their qualifications were, or they didn't have a job at all.
right? Okay.
Okay. One of my goals, in fact, my initial goal that I was able to identify was to be a high school guidance counselor. So the person who ran that program had connections to the State Department. And because of my experience working for him, he was able to recommend me to become certified as a high school guidance counselor.
Oh.
I applied for a job while I was still working there. And I told a friend of mine about that job. My friend at that time applied for the job and he got the job. And I applied for the job that he lost.
Oh, wow.
Okay. I got that job. It was being a counselor in a mental health agency.
Wow.
Okay. While I was there, shortly after I was hired, the person who hired me left. And one of the reasons I took the job was because I knew I could learn a lot from that person.
And they left.
And they left. I asked if I could have that person's job, and they said I didn't have the right degree. I had the master's in counseling, but I needed to have a master's in psychology. So while I was working there, I got the master's in psychology.
Wow, congratulations.
Thank you. I didn't get along with the person who took over his job. I found out about an opening in a vocational high school for a guidance counselor.
Yay!
So I applied for that job. And then I got that job. While I was going for my master's there, I had learned about a program that helps people to become licensed as marriage and family therapists.
Wow.
So while I was a high school guidance counselor, well, the vocational school counselor, I applied for the program that helped me to become licensed as a marriage and family counselor.
This is incredible.
And then I found out, and this is the end, and then I'm showing how I was led in a way.
Yeah, it's like everything lined up for you.
Yeah. And then while I was going for it was called an Ed.S degree. While I was finishing that, I found out that that department was starting a doctoral program. So I figured I have 2 masters and an Ed.S degree. Why not go for the doctorate?
Yeah.
So I applied and I got accepted, obviously. I got accepted. And while I was in that program, which was an EDD, it was a Doctor of Education program, they provided the opportunity by taking 1 or 2 additional courses, it could be a Ph.D. So I did that.
Wow, this is incredible.
So that's what happened from 7.
This is amazing. Because this is true, like rag to riches, in the sense that your life became so much richer from the person that told you basically that you were stupid and who didn't value your worth.
Yes.
Because
Yes.
success obviously isn't just about money, it's about being happy with who you are and what you're doing, and being happy with yourself and feeling good about yourself.
And actually, what I'll add to what you just said is that in a certain sense, the only thing that really defines success is if a person has a goal and they accomplish that goal. My way of thinking is being successful means that you have lived your life according to spiritual principles. Because so many people put their self-worth on either the job they have or the amount of money they have. And in my opinion, self-worth is based on who you are and what you do, not what you accomplish. What you accomplish is a bonus.
I was going to ask you, what is the difference between what you do and what you accomplish? Because when you do stuff, you accomplish.
Well, I was connecting it to self-worth. Because when people talk to me about success or being successful, they have a certain pride about them. Wow, I made $500,000 last year. To me, the way to say that is, I set a goal to make $500,000 and I was able to accomplish that. And now I'm able to help other people. I'm in a position to be able to help other people in a better way, rather than being so prideful about how much money I have, because money can disappear in a minute. And money has nothing to do with your integrity and your character.
In actual fact, it can be harder to stick with your integrity and character when money's at play, because obviously there's entrepreneurs, people in the business world that do things and use psychology to manipulate, whereas you can use it for the greater good to actually help people because you genuinely care about them and because you want to persuade them that they can achieve their dreams, that then they can do things that they never felt possible, rather than trying to make them needy of you. Therefore, you need their products and services just because they create the need within you, if you understand what I mean.
Yeah, I completely agree.
So, in terms of where you're at now in your business, do you still work for agencies and other people, or are you totally working for yourself nowadays?
Well, nowadays I'm working for myself. I'm in private practice. It's a virtual practice, which means I meet with people over the internet. Um, and again, I work with people under my licenses of marriage and family therapy and addiction. I also talk about nutrition because I have that certification in applied clinical nutrition. I've also recently, quite recently, I've written a book. So, in addition to being a best-selling international author in other people's compilation books, my most recent book is a book about helping people in recovery from addictions. It talks about all kinds of addictions in a very general way, and it also provides strategies for people that they can apply to help them to remain and be successful in recovery. I also have been a speaker. I guess I could say I still am a speaker. I didn't stop exactly. And I do trainings. So
Okay.
that's basically where I'm at right now in terms of my career.
Wow, that's a lot. Can we talk about you said you've been an international best-selling author as part of a compilation book.
Actually, it was two different compilation books.
I can probably guess kind of where that came from, but I'd like you to explain. Where is it part of Blue Talks by any chance? Any of
One of them, one of them was Blue Talks, and the other was a book called Share Your Message with the World.
the-
Um, Something that not many people know about me is at one point I had my own radio show,
Mhm.
and the person who was running the radio station wrote put together a compilation book, and he asked me if I wanted to contribute a chapter. So those were the two compilation books, and I'm going to be in a third compilation book, a blues talk compilation book.
Wow. So you said that the first one was to do with the fact when you were radio presenting, did you say?
Yes,
The second one was
was the Blue Talks.
Business, Life, and the Universe,
Yeah, it's volume 3.
Volume 3 with Corey Poirier.
Yes.
Then the third one is a Blue Talks book that you're going to be in. And you working on that at the moment, or have you already finished your chapter for that?
Well, that's a future book, and for the people that are familiar with the spiritual teacher Joe Vitale,
Yeah.
he's going to be writing a foreword in that book.
Wow. So how did you get involved with that? Like for the people who are aspiring authors or who are already authors listening to this right now, how did you get involved in being part of a international best-selling book? Like not just once, but more than once.
Well, the first one was when had that radio program.
What radio program was it?
Um,
Are you
okay,
able
let
to
me think.
say?
Yeah, let me think if I can remember what they called it. Oh, Tough Talk Radio.
Wow.
It
Was
was Tough Talk.
was that in United States?
Yes. Yeah. So the way I got involved with the Blues Talks,
Yeah.
here's another lead. It's a short one though. Another lead story. When I got into the compilation book, Corey Poirier was interviewing people who were in that book because he does radio interviews.
Ah, yeah.
And I stayed in contact with him after he interviewed me for that book. And he started the Blue Talks. And that's how I got involved with being able to write the chapter. And then he keeps developing and adding more programs. He now has a yearly boot camp for speakers and authors. And I learned about the possibility of being able to co-author another Blues Talk book during the most recent boot camp that I attended.
which I was that as well.
Yeah, yeah. So I definitely would recommend anybody that wants to grow, either as an author or speaker, to get involved with that particular program. I don't know exactly how to tell people to get in touch with Corey.
Yeah. Corey Poirier's speaker boot camp, it usually goes to his site if they Google Corey Poirier, and then they actually put speaker boot camp, it usually comes up with his website. Oh yeah, you might need to spell it out to people. Corey is P-O-R-E-Y, people, in case you didn't know, and it's P-O-I-R-I-E-R, isn't it?
Yes.
His name is, I call him Corey Poirier, but I've heard his surname pronounced in different ways. But yeah, I've known Corey a long time, and I'm in one of his original books, which is the book of How and Why. So I'm in
Oh,
the book.
yes.
So yeah, that's how I've been friends with Corey online now for a very long time, but I was in the original and I'm in the other one because he got it republished under an actual publisher, because he self-published originally, and then so I'm in both of them. But the first one shows my picture, the second one doesn't, because the traditional publishing company didn't put the photographs in there because they do things slightly different. I know behind the scenes with Corey's books, some of them, from what I understand, correct me if I'm wrong, but as part of his program, you pay for the program and you get to be in his book as a chapter in the book. Is that correct? Or did you get into the book just by him asking you to be in the book?
My memory, I don't remember being in a program for the volume 3 book. I may have been, because I'm in several of his programs. I'm in the Vault, and there was another program that the speakers program. So it might have been part of one of those programs. And definitely at this point, he has programs, and that's part of the package, to be able to have a chapter in one of the talks.
Does he ever have a situation where people can actually buy like their way into the book? They could actually pay him to have a chapter in the book, or is that not how he works?
Well, if it's part of the program, the money that's paid to be in the program goes towards being able to be in the book. I don't know if he has a separate charge only to be in the book.
Yeah, because I was just wondering if people are listening to this now, like how they could get involved. So the best way is to kind of like seek out Corey online and then do some research and become part of one of his programs.
Yeah.
So out of the programs that you've done of Corey's, which ones have you so far had success with, as you would call success?
I like the way you asked that question. Well, I would say this is sort of a roundabout answer. I've had success in the sense of it's helped me to know what I want to do and the direction I want to take with the speaking and the writing. And of course, obviously helped me to know what to do also.
So how did you get to be a speaker then? Where have you spoken at?
You want a long story? I'll make it as short as possible, because it's really not as long as the first one. But that's really a really good question. My life has been such a joy.
Oh,
So many experiences that lead me. Oh, goodness. Okay. I was working in the family program in the court system in New Jersey, and I offered to do a training on communication for the staff. And the person who was running the program invited someone from probation to attend the training. When I got done with the training, the person who attended that training contacted the state agency that oversees training of probation officers throughout the whole state. That person this is how I got started. That person contacted me and asked me if I'd do a training for the state probation officers.
wow.
Now, here's a little nuance to that whole story. And my main communication in telling this part is for people to never give up. No matter whatever happens, never give up. When I was in high school, I took a public speaking course, and every time I got up to give a speech, I was terrified. When I got into college, I took a public speaking course, and I was so terrified, I became physically ill,
And
and I wasn't able to attend some of the classes. When I got to the point in whatever speaking I did do of realizing, and this is a message for everybody, it's not only about me. You don't have to be perfect. Just keep focused on your goal. Do it one step at a time. The turning point for me to be able to do with reasonable comfort, to do the public speaking, is I realized I didn't have to have all the answers at that moment, and to focus on what I intended to communicate rather than worrying what the people thought about what I was saying. So I went from, and I don't mean this as ego, and I don't mean this as bragging. I just mean this as when you follow your heart and you're able to stay focused, you can be in a position to help many, many people and to achieve whatever you want to achieve in your life. So going from being terrified to giving trainings or doing trainings at a state convention for probation officers throughout the entire state, as I was giving the talk, a camera crew came into the room and started filming the training. And when I asked the person, the director of training, why the filming crew had come in while I was doing the training, he said, because we want to demonstrate to other trainers the way to do training.
wow.
So I went from being terrified to the point of becoming physically ill to being able to provide training to people that was helpful.
That's incredible. It's incredible. And very, very inspirational for people.
Yes, that's my point in telling all these stories. I want people to be inspired and to know they can do it. Like, sort of Nike, just do it.
Yeah,
No,
it's really, really
yeah,
important.
yeah. Now, we can't do anything we want. We do have our certain limitations,
Do we?
but it doesn't mean that we can't accomplish things that really are fulfilling and truly being of service.
Yeah, that's incredible. So many good things. So where do you get your clients from now, the people that come to you to be helped now? Because obviously when you're working under an agency or working for other people, they kind of get the people that you need to help. So as a self-employed person who's working for themselves, how do you get your clients? Like, where do they come from now?
They come from a few different places. One is insurance. The people that have insurance, I provide the counseling through insurance companies. So when the clients call the insurance company identifies different therapists that they can call.
Wow, that's very
Okay. Another source is word of mouth. People that meet with me for counseling that are satisfied with what I do with them, they recommend me to their friends. Also, I have an advertisement in a magazine. It's a professional publication called Psychology Today. And I'm listed as a provider in there.
Oh, wow. I've heard
And
of
of
that.
course, people they'll Google, marriage therapist or whatever.
So You have to, don't you? You can't just go and be a counselor or therapist. You have to do the specific training. It's not, so for example, with coaching, you don't have, as far as I know and still understand it, you don't have to have an official qualification for coaching, but for any type of therapy, like a psychiatrist, a psychologist, counselor, you have to undertake specific training, and you have to do it at different levels in order to be certified.
Okay, well, my understanding, which may not be accurate, is well, I'll say it one of two different ways. You either do need to have some kind of certification or training to be a coach, or there's an international training that you could take. I don't know that just anybody can call themselves a coach.
From the groups I'm in, there are people who have got official coaching qualifications. There are other people that are coaching without an official qualification.
So it might depend on where you live and what the guidelines and rules are.
But for counselling, for example, in the UK, you have to get up to about level 5 to be a proper professional counsellor and therapist. You have to go through multiple stages and qualifications to get the full qualification to be a counsellor. So it's not something you can just call yourself. It has to be professionally trained, and it's a lot of years. It's about 5 years to be a professional counsellor in the UK. So what is it in the USA? You know, you're in the USA, aren't you? So
yeah, yes. So in order to be a teacher, you have to be certified as a teacher. In order to be, let's say, a therapist, counselor and therapist terms, they're kind of interchangeable, but it can be confusing because sometimes when people hear the term counselor, they think guidance counselor. So just for clarification, I'll say therapist, whether it be marriage and family or addiction or a licensed social worker. Okay. There's plenty of training. There's college, which obviously is 4 years, and then there's graduate school, and then there's internship, and then there's licensing exam. So there is a lot of training and a lot of experience. You need to get certain supervised experience, and you need obviously the specific degree. You can't call yourself a social worker if you don't have the social worker degree and if you're not licensed. So, for example, I have a Ph.D. in psychology. I cannot say I'm a psychologist unless I was employed by a company as a psychologist, because you have to be licensed as a psychologist in order to say that you're a psychologist.
Is there any way of getting a license yourself as a self-employed person?
Yes. Yes, you have to take a certain amount of training. You have to get a certain amount of supervision, and then you get to take an exam.
So what do you enjoy the most about the work you do?
So what I enjoy the most about what I do is seeing that the suggestions and the recommendations and the guidance that I provide to clients makes a difference in their life. That, to me, there is no money in the world that equals that. To know that the information that I provide has helped that client to accomplish their goals and overcome their challenges. That's it.
Yeah, like you said, it's priceless. So as a business owner, what are the difficulties and challenges you have faced in your business in regards to what you do?
Well, as silly as it may sound, deciding where I was going to practice and if I was going to practice alone or with somebody, with a group, or even with one or two other people, deciding if I was going to become contracted with insurance companies to get clients or just seek private pay clients that were going to pay out of pocket as opposed to through insurance. Also, sometimes there have been clients that I've met with that didn't really want to be there. So, for example, I would see a male client whose wife pushed him to go into counseling. And he would tell me that in the beginning. And then maybe 15, 20 minutes into the conversation, he would just explode into anger and walk out. It had nothing to do with what I said. My interpretation, which may or may not have been valid, was that he was looking for reasons to justify not being there, and he deeply resented being there. Another difficulty that I have, and it's just a difficulty for me, because I feel sad about it, is that when someone tells me what they want to accomplish, and this doesn't happen very often, luckily, when someone tells me what they want to accomplish and they don't follow my guidelines, they don't even just try. I'm not saying they don't obey me. They don't even give it a try. And they keep complaining about the same problem. That's a challenge. There are ways to work around it, and, do my best to be as helpful as possible. But the bottom line, and I've had this experience where certain people have not taken my suggestions and they just stopped coming to me. Because, one perfect example, and this was a very, 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 for me, an extremely sad example. I was meeting with a couple who had a very young child. And the woman was drinking alcohol excessively. And of course, that affected her personality. And she didn't want to stop drinking. So the last counseling session we had, during the time we were talking, she just exploded, screamed at her husband, told him that she's filing for divorce, and walked out of the counseling session. When I say that's difficult, what I mean by that is it's difficult in the sense that I always talk with people having the firm belief that anyone can accomplish anything realistic that they want to accomplish, and people can get past their challenges. So when I'm counseling someone who's not willing to see, because I never guarantee anything because you can't, but they're not, that person, when a person's not willing to see if my suggestions can help. And as an example, when it ends up in the breakup of a family, it's hard for me in terms of the sadness that I feel, because in my belief, what's possible was not going to happen.
I really understand that, because I do a lot of on my other channel. I'm not an actual qualified coach, but I do what I call a lot of coaching from life experience about dating and relationships on my other channel. And I share my own life story a lot. So it's a bit like a reality TV chat show I do. And I talk about dating and scenarios I've been in with guys. And unfortunately, I'm an empathetic person, and I do have a history of attracting abusive people. I've done a course in the UK, which is a pattern changing course, which took me 14 weeks to do, which is spotting signs of abusers and the words they use and the actions they do or do not do, the things they say, gaslighting, all that lot. So I'm quite well trained in that. And I've obviously learned a lot through doing the dating process myself. But I have a lot of guys, and they are, they're not being the guy they could be. So I see all the potential in these guys. Like, for example, this year I went on dates via Facebook dating. I'm on a break from that now, but at the time I met up with 2 different guys in the UK, both foreign guys, because I like foreign guys. And one of them, he completely lied about his story. I say complete, there was some truths, but it was very much a different story, I found out. And he tried to come back into my life and give him another chance, which he completely failed on, because he was he was like using it as, if I tell you the truth, will you be in a relationship with me? I'm like, but that's not how it works. That's manipulation. But I see, because I'm an empathetic person, which I feel that you are as well, I see the potential in people so much. And I'm like, if only you would see that you're wasting your life being this type of person when you could live a much more fulfilling, happy existence if you just learn how to communicate better and improve yourself and help yourself. And, you know, there was another guy who I met up with. He didn't lie to me, but he was even on my channel this week coming after me again. But he's very much into physical stuff, and that's really the reason he's after me. And so it's very difficult because I did have feelings for this guy, but again, I see that he's used some manipulation tactics, some narcissistic traits that he's had. And I even go on my channel, these people, I tend to block them on my channel, but some of them create new channel usernames. And also if you block someone on your YouTube channel, they can still watch you. So I have these people watching me, and when they come back into my life, like a couple of them, both of these guys have come back under different usernames and have and in different places, like by phone and by email, and they've said, I watched your channel, Sandra, and I'm like, that's great, like, but I'm there as thinking, what have you learnt from it? Like, because I teach a lot of the way to communicate more effectively, be a good person, be better at being the best version of you, be better at dating and relationships for yourself, and, you know, state what you want, work out what you want, communicate that effectively, you know, don't just like try and randomly go for anything. And I teach a lot of really good, important morals and ethical stuff on my channel, but they tend to watch me, but they're not taking this in. And I even say on my channel, look, you know, don't be this person on your deathbed when you look back and you've treated like women, because, you know, I think some of them are coming from a I'm more superior type of stance as well. So I say, you know, don't be this type of person that treats women like this or anyone like this. Be the better person, because do you really want to be that person on your deathbed that is literally thinking, oh, I treat people like this, like what did I do with my life? You can change now. And I like younger guys, so, you know, I'm thinking like, you know, I know they're younger, but I'm like, I treat them like an adult, because I think it's important to treat people who are younger like adults so that they get used to behaving like an adult. And I try to instill really good information into their kind of like minds to help enable them to be a better version of themselves, to help them throughout their whole life. Even if they don't end up in a relationship with me, I want them to be better for another girl or another person, you know. And it really, like, I feel like you do, I feel that's such a shame when they do not follow my advice. They're even listening to me, they say, oh, I watch your videos all the time, but they're not taking my advice. I'm like, you could have such a more better life, a more vibrant life if you were just being your authentic self, not lying, not covering things up, and also, you know, just being a better version of you. Like I keep saying, get into personal and professional development, be the best version of you, but they kind of like, it goes in one ear and out the other, I think. And so they're not actually changing. Even if they pretend they're changing, they're just saying they've changed as a form of getting what they want rather than actually changing on a cellular level. And I just feel so sorry for them, actually, because I'm like, you know, you don't realize that you're going to lead a miserable life being this way. You're going to lead a lonely life, whereas you could open yourself up and become a better version of you to help yourself and to help others. And so, yeah, I really feel when you said that story about that lady who wouldn't give up alcohol, I just really understood, especially from an empathetic point of view as well, that it's just a shame. Your kind of heart bleeds for them in a way, if you know what I mean.
Well, yeah, because obviously that person is drinking because it serves a purpose for them. Besides it being an addiction, you know, there is a physical dependence, but also it's serving a purpose for them. Obviously not facing things that if they did face them, but in their way of thinking, it's too painful to face.
Yeah. Only when the pain of leaving that situation is less than the pain of doing it will they leave.
Yeah. I guess another way of saying that, which is exactly saying the same thing you said, is when the pain becomes great enough that they want to get out of that pain.
Yeah. Exactly. So just going back to the business perspective again, then, in terms of what you've done in your career, is there any mistakes you've made that you would warn other people about not to do in their business?
Yes. Yes. One mistake I made was when I had certain ideas, or when I heard something or read something that I thought was really good, I didn't save it.
Oh,
And the reason I'm saying that that was a mistake is because those ideas could have been a book.
yes. Authors pay attention, and aspiring authors. So
Yeah,
true.
yeah, that was definitely a mistake. Another mistake, and in a certain sense, I sort of knew I was making it, but not knowing it at the same time, is I didn't seek guidance on how to be organized in business. I just sort of, as they say, played it by ear. I just did what I thought was okay. Maybe I got an idea or two here or there. But one of the things I would definitely recommend, especially when you're starting out, maybe when you're starting out with a private practice, or maybe even a little while before, definitely get some kind of business coach. Or join organizations. So, for example, if you want to become a social worker or a marriage and family therapist, there are professional organizations you can join and seek guidance within that organization. Also, there's nothing wrong with not knowing. The problem is if you don't know and you don't do what you need to do to be able to know, so that you can have the practice that you want to have.
In terms of people who are listening now, if you were to tell the people who are listening 3 action steps, because this channel is all about putting the law of action back in attraction, because nothing happens unless you take action. If you were to explain what 3 actions they would take personally and professionally in their life if they wanted to start their own business, if they wanted to start making money online, for example, what would be the 3 professional action steps, and what would be the 3 personal action steps that you would advise?
So 3 personal and 3 professional?
Yes.
Okay. Well, in a certain sense, there's some overlap
Mm-hmm.
between the two, because obviously who you are is strongly connected, firmly connected to what you do. So, I mean, certainly one thing I would recommend as best as possible is to know yourself. Do your best to be as objective and open-minded as possible. Assess what you want to improve and things that you are able to accomplish without much effort. Think about those things from the point of view of assessing rather than judging. Don't think of yourself as, let's say, as a simple example, being stupid or not capable. Because if you don't know something at the moment, it doesn't mean that at some point in the relatively near future that you won't know it. So I'm going to give you a little quote here from Henry Ford. And this may not be the exact wording, but what I just said is captured in the saying. If you think you can, or if you think you can't, you're right. So our beliefs have a very strong influence on what we're able to do. Me thinking that I was stupid, I proved it in a sense. I don't really mean that. But I sort of proved I flunked out of college. And I even flunked out of a college that was not really very difficult to get into. Also, an example of how our thoughts are so important. When I was in graduate school, I took a vocational testing class, which meant I would give tests to people to determine what they want to do in their life. I didn't have anyone that I could test. Now, this is graduate school, Okay, this was my first master's. I took the test myself.
Wow. That's a good.
I didn't know how to interpret it. So I went to see my teacher and I asked my teacher to interpret it. And this graduate school was a very good graduate school. It wasn't Ivy League, but it was a high level, highly competitive graduate school. The first thing that the teacher interpreted from the test is tell this person not to consider going to college. They should probably do something vocationally. Now, the reason that did not upset me was because I knew, and I know. Although it was more true then than it is now, I was not a very good test taker. But my test results, whatever standardized test I would take, they were not a true, accurate reflection of my ability. And the vice president of the college that allowed me to go to night school to prove that I could do college work wrote a letter of recommendation to that graduate school telling them that exact thing. Don't pay as much attention to this person's test scores because they do not reflect his true ability. And I stand behind his ability and I highly recommend him. Okay. So getting back to your question, answering your question.
It's beautiful. It's beautiful. That.
Identify what you want to do primarily by the amount of passion you have for doing it, not based on how much money you can make or the prestige it'll bring you. Because in my opinion, money and prestige follows passion. You can't make money and obviously have the prestige if you're miserable at what you're doing.
Mm-hmm.
Or at the very least, you can't enjoy it because eventually your unhappiness and your distress is going to cost you your mental and physical health to some degree.
It's very important advice.
Okay. Another piece of advice I would give people is to look at, in deciding what you want to do, is to look at the Occupational Outlook Handbook. That book will help people to know what the potential is for employment, what the salary is. Now, I don't know if it's possible to get, I guess you can get it in Canada. I don't know if jobs in Canada are listed though, but that's a book that's published by the Department of Labor in the United States. The other thing that I would recommend is to also look at the Dictionary of Occupational Titles. That's a book that has obviously all different job titles, and it identifies the qualifications and what you'd be doing in that job.
Amazing.
So my short-term answer is know what you want, choose what you'll have passion for, and most likely you will have the least amount of distress in your career following those guidelines.
How do you think people should change a passion into an actual profession? Because some are a lot more easier to do than others. How would you convert that? Is there a stepping stone people could take?
I think so. The first step would be, do I want to work with people? Do I want to be part of a team? Or do I want to be more on my own? You could still work for a company. Okay? So that would be the first step. The next step is, would I want to provide a service to people? Or would I want to work on things? So like fix something, maybe computer software, become a technician. Okay. Another thing to decide is, if I had the choice, What hours do I want to work? Do I want to work night shift? Do I want to work days? Another thing to identify is what are your short and long-term goals? Because by knowing that, it will help you to know if you start a certain job, what salary range you'd be looking for to be able to accomplish the short-term goal, and what finances that job could provide that might contribute to your long-term goal. But the first job doesn't have to do that necessarily. It could just be the stepping stone while you're also thinking, well, I'm getting into this job as entry level. How high do I want to go in that profession or that job? So that's what I would suggest. How to turn the passion, realistically into, while you're looking for whatever you want to do.
So you feel that people should have a paid job first, and then do something that they're passionate about, start that off while they're actually earning an income from an employed job. Is that what you feel?
Yeah, I think that's probably the most realistic, safest way to do it. Because starting a business has so many initial hurdles and so many challenges. And you do learn as you go along the way. You really need to know what you're doing, unless somebody would take you into their practice and guide you. And also, that's what apprenticeships are all about too. Once you finish your education, you can apply for, and many schools provide apprenticeships, so you can get on the job training. So not only to become more proficient, but also to know if you really want to do that, or what aspect you want to do.
Why do you think people have a fascination with money? Because obviously, if you look at the term on the internet, like how to make money, and this person makes X amount of hundreds of thousands, millions of pounds, billionaires, why do you think, as a society in general, and as some percentage of the population, they have such a fascination with money and getting more and more of it? What do you think is the underlying cause of that? Do you think it's good, or do you think it's bad?
To have a passion for money?
Yes, and also why do you think that some people are very obsessed with it? Do you think that's a good thing?
I do not think it's good for people to be obsessed with making a certain amount of money, because it's impossible to ever make the so-called right amount of money. The reason for that is, as humans, when we accomplish something, we want more. When we have the obsession to make big, big money, when we reach that goal, on some level, we realize, well, wait a minute, why don't I feel happy? How come I don't have all this excitement? Oh, get more money. Then it's like a dog chasing its tail. So there isn't anything wrong with wanting to make a lot of money. But when you have a passion, and that passion translates into whatever it is that you do for a living, you'll make whatever money you need to make, and maybe even want to make, because the passion will set your vibration to attract the opportunities that will allow you to make that money.
That's fantastic. I think we should wrap up now by saying where people can find you. Like, if people want to get in touch with you, where can they find you? Online, presumably, website or Facebook?
Yes, usually it is online these days. Yes. Well, go to my website. It's alansimberg.com. I'm also on Facebook and LinkedIn. I'm going to be changing my LinkedIn profile some. I'm not right now. It's focused quite a bit on coaching, and that's because I was certified as a dream builder coach and a life mastery consultant by Mary Morrissey. And I was thinking about doing that at one point, but now I've decided that I really want to stick with my license. Also, just as a quick aside, the virtual sessions that I do for the counseling part, I can only do it in 2 states in the United States, which is Texas and New Jersey, because you have to be licensed in the state in order to be able to do telehealth.
That's very
Okay,
important.
okay. So we have my website, alansimberg.com. We have LinkedIn and Facebook. And if someone wants to call me, my phone number is 281-785-0660. And at some point, hopefully in the not too distant future, the book that's going to be published this Saturday, I'm going to be using it not only as a standalone for people who are in recovery or want to be in recovery, but also to market an e-learning program that I'm going to be marketing to individuals and to addiction treatment centers. And that website, when it becomes active, hopefully in not too distant future, is lifemasterywithalan.com.
Oh, I love that.
So that's pretty much how to get in touch with me.
Brilliant. So tell us a little bit more about the book and the course that you were just talking about.
Okay.
What's the name of the book and course?
Well, the name of the book is Back to Living. And there's like a little subtitle, which I don't quite remember what the subtitle is at this moment. And basically, that book talks about addiction in general terms. It, in my opinion, clears up misunderstandings that some people have about recovery. Some people believe that recovery is abstinence. So, for example, not drinking alcohol, but abstinence is only one part of recovery. Recovery is leading your life differently in the best way, most fulfilling way possible. That's recovery. And that book provides strategies on how to live the most fulfilling life possible. And the e-learning course, which I'm also going to be using the book to market the e-learning course, has much more information in it in terms of strategies on how to manage recovery.
Wow. So we'll put the links in the description down below of this video, so people can obviously know where to find you, and if they come across the audio version they can find you as well. So that's really, really good. Have you got any final thoughts do you want to share with anyone? If there was one thing that the people listening could take away from your whole interview today, what would it be?
It would be to realistically believe in yourself and don't give up. You can have many different accomplishments as long as you can believe in yourself and you take the steps necessary to be able to accomplish those steps.
That's amazing. Thank you so much for joining us today. It's been super, super fun and exciting and very insightful.
Well, thank you very much for this opportunity to be of service to your listening audience.
Oh, thank you. Dr. Alan, is that how you like to be addressed?
I always say, call me anything, but don't call me late for dinner.
Thank you so much. Lovely to see you.
Same here.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Subscribe and hit the bell icon so you can shortcut your time how to make money, make cash doing what you love so you can achieve your dreams. Find out more at makemoneymakecash.com.